Welcome to the GateDrop Podcast. GateDrop.com, giving you the jump in motocross news.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the GateDrop.com podcast. This week we're going to have a look at the AMA racing from Southwick, the proposed format for the Motocross of Nations that could see some GP points made available to get the GP riders involved. And we're also going to preview this weekend's MXGP in Oss, the Netherlands. So I'll welcome Andy McKinstry to the pod. Andy, how you doing?
Not so bad, thank you. Can't complain. Everything good with yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. We're at an Ulster Championship yesterday, so we've still got our motocross fixed for the weekend. And with the GP coming up on Saturday, it's not too long to wait for another race. So definitely plenty to look forward to. But I think we'll look back, first of all, to Southwick on Saturday and a sand race. Don't get too many of those in America, but Southwick, always known for its sand, although it isn't quite Lommel. Even Ken Roxon was saying he struggled a wee bit with the hard base and the hard nature of the track beneath the sand, so it seems a bit tricky to set bikes up and different things. But Dylan Ferrandis yet again came away with the win, although he wasn't too. His comments actually after the second race were quite funny, because he was pretty frustrated at being told by the team that he wasn't allowed to push 100%, and he felt frustrated that he wasn't able to go after Roxon in the second moto. But regardless of that, he's taking another overall with a 1-3, and he looks like he's starting to inch away in this championship.
Yeah, it was very impressive again, I thought, and even though he was frustrated because he had to settle for the third at the end of the day, I think he should be looking at the bigger picture. He's now extended his points gap in the championship to 19. I'm sure if you'd have told him that coming into the season, he'd have snapped your hand off for it. So I think he should be happy with where he is. At the moment, I would say, in terms of raw speed, he's the quickest. And if he keeps riding the way he is, he's going to be very, very hard to beat for this title. I mean, I know Tomac was very, very fast in the second moto, but he's still at the point where he's to put two motos in like that. So when it comes to consistency and raw speed, Ferrandis seems to have both covered. And he's also very fit. So at the end of the races and as the tracks get rougher, that's when he's at his best, which probably goes back to his GP days. But that's a good positive to have in America.
Yeah, and Tomac's over 50 behind, I think. So his inconsistencies really cost him. We saw in that second moto how fast he can still go whenever everything's going his way. But again, he mentioned a couple of things about bike changes, that he's been fiddling around with the bike different at all the different rounds this year, trying to get something that he's comfortable with. But he's had that bike for a couple of seasons now, so it's a wee bit surprising he's still trying to search for a comfort base to allow him to ride to his potential. And also he mentioned for the second race, he found he was able to ride a lot of outsides. But for Eli, that always seems to be his MO. He's always looking to carry his speed and rip around the outside of turns and carry momentum. Now, every track, he might not be able to do that, or at least maybe a first moto before the track's developed into the second moto. And we're maybe seeing Tomac's strength as well as his weakness there, because if the track doesn't have that outside flow and momentum, he maybe just can't get into that flow and get into that speed that he had in the second moto, because the speed was pretty unbelievable. But we haven't really seen that. Even the races he's won this year, he hasn't had that blistering speed where just no one else could touch him.
Yeah, exactly. And you'd like to wonder where that speed was in the first moto as well. I think this year, more so than in the past, if he gets a bad start, I think he's struggling to come up through the pack a lot more this year. Don't know what that would be down to, but I know in the second moto he didn't get the best of starts, but it was still much better than the first moto start. So at least he was with them at the start and could follow them, and then, you know, put on a charge and pass his way through the guys. First moto, it was a shotgun start, and similar to quite a lot of motos this year, when he does get the bad start, he seems to be struggling to come through the pack for whatever reason, which isn't typically like him, because, you know, we've known Tomac now to be the fastest in that series outdoor-wise for a while. So strange, and yeah, it's a consistency thing. If he can ride both motos the way he rode the second moto in Southwick, then I think that's whenever he'll be happy about his weekend. It's unbelievable he had that speed in the second moto, and he actually still missed out in the podium at the weekend.
Yeah, and even at times in the first moto, I was watching the lap times, and he was actually the fastest guy on the track, even though he was 8. But yet he still didn't actually move up from there. His lap time seemed to sort of go back to everyone else's speed as well. So even within the moto, he seemed to be struggling to find the speed consistently, even when he found it, it wasn't obviously lasting for a full race. So the Eli Tomac puzzle is still there, and he seems to find the missing piece and then lose it again quite regularly at the minute. So something to keep an eye on. He's probably out of the championship, but as you say, if he can find that speed every moto till the end of the championship, he might still have an outside chance. But I'm not sure he's going to be really one of the favourites just yet until that consistency comes, because he's so far off it. Even with his win, he still actually lost points to Ferrandis there because of his first moto. So Eli Tomac, he's bound to be pretty frustrated because he's shown he has the speed whenever he's on, but it's finding that on button a bit more often in the second half of the season.
Yeah, but I mean, it's all about progress compared to the start of the year when he was sort of, it was two bad motos for his standards. At least now he's putting in one good moto, a national. So the next step is to have two good motos in the same national, and then I think he'll be happier with the outcome. But yeah, as you say, I think the championship is going to be very, very tough for him now. But compared to where he was at the start of the season, at least he's came back strong. And if he can just find that consistency for two motos, then at least he'll be happier ending the season that way, and a decent end to his Kawasaki career, you would say. But yeah, it's going to be very, very tough for the championship, especially with the way Ferrandis is riding at the moment.
And talking about progression, Cooper Webb did a lot better in terms of his speed differential to the front. At Southwick, he spoke to Steve Mathis after, and he said he's made some big changes on and off the bike in between Redbud and Southwick. So it'll be interesting to find out a wee bit more what that was. There has been rumours that he's going to stop working with Alton Baker, even though that relationship has brought Cooper 2 Supercross titles. But we've seen before that working with Alton can create a lot of pressure in terms of the dedication that you have to show with him, and maybe the fun side can be lacking a bit, and especially when you're riding 2 championships in America. We've seen with Cooper, he's all in on the Supercross, and he's not starting outdoor testing until a couple of weeks in between Supercross and motocross. So he's coming in behind what, say, maybe some of the other riders who haven't had a good Supercross season have been able to get a jump start on him outdoors. So Cooper seems to be struggling to make the balance between the two, and I'm wondering if he's trying to find a way that he can still be successful indoors and especially outdoors while getting his balance on his life a wee bit better to try and be consistent for a full season, because he's not the sort of guy that would be happy running around at the back end of the top 10. He's currently 8th in the championship, and for the Supercross champion, that's not really what you expect.
Yeah, although having said that, I was actually pretty impressed with him at Southwick because, the track wasn't really, really gnarly, but for an AMA track, it was more difficult than most. So after a tough start to the season, to have your best national there, it does show progress. So even though he's still not where he wants to be, 6'5", I would say, is a step in the right direction for 5th overall. And, he'll probably be feeling better now heading into the rest of the nationals. If you can get a 5th overall at Southwick and still not be 100%, it's definitely progress. So it'll be interesting to see if he's turned the corner now and the results can get better, the speed can get better, and the results to go with that.
Yeah, he said he's starting to find his groove a wee bit, I think, outdoors, but he obviously knows it's too late for the championship. But even just individual motors, it'll be interesting to see if he can continue this improvement. One guy I did feel sorry for was Aaron Plessinger. He rode really well first moto again to get third, another great start, and he got once again a great start second moto, but 2 turns in the bike let him down. So he's always usually laughing and smiling as Aaron Plessinger, but you could see the disappointment that cut him pretty deep in the when he was waiting in the pits there to see if they could get anything fixed with the bike. But unfortunately he ended up with 0 points, and that's dropped him from 3rd to 4th in the championship. So it'll be interesting to know if he just misses the 3rd place on the podium. He probably has bonuses for top 3 in the championship. What way Yamaha will work that if it was a mechanical that's cost him top 3 overall. So it'll be interesting to see if he can rebound from that, because as we were saying, Tomac found something that second moto. So is he going to start to carry the momentum and take advantage of Plessinger's DNF there?
Yeah, but there's certainly nothing wrong with Plessinger's speed this year anyway. He's been pretty consistent at the front and getting good starts as well. So Star Yamaha have definitely done a good job there in terms of progress from previous years. And Yeah, Plessinger's riding is also good, so it's a good combination at the minute. But yeah, like you said, it's just a pity about the Sakamoto DNF because I think third, fourth, fifth, and maybe even sixth is very, very close in the championship. So a DNF at this stage in the season could prove very costly, and especially for Plessinger because he probably would have been in the top three again in the Sakamoto, top five at worst. So he'd have probably still been in that third position. So disappointing, but not much you can do about that one. Just look to rebound at the next round. There's no reason why he still can't put himself in that position for third in the championship with the way he's riding. He's been good this year, and it'll be interesting to see what the future does hold for him after the links with KTM and also rumours now that he'll stay Yamaha. It'll be interesting to see what way that materialises. He certainly seems to be a wanted man anyway.
Just quickly on Max Anstey, another day and another disappointment really at Southwick. Mechanical problems in the first moto. He actually rode pretty well the second moto to come through almost to the back end of the top 10. I think 12th he ended up or so, but he probably wants to get a good start with the DNF in the first moto. That meant he was in the outside gate the way the Americans work, because your gate picks based on your first moto finish going into moto 2. So he basically had his work cut out for him as soon as that bike DNF first race. So another tough weekend for Max Anstey, even if his speed maybe was improving again and he had the sand skills, but again we didn't get to see it. And Max's season, 13th in the championship, probably doesn't look as bad as it probably is. He's had issues with the bike. Obviously the Instagram posts show just how frustrated the Anstey clan is at the minute with what's going on, and there's no doubt he isn't showing what his raw talent and potential and capability is in this class this season. And MXGP are looking, and the HRC Honda are looking a replacement rider for Mitch Evans. So Anstey's frustration and his raw talent might be a good combination for HRC Honda, but Max has to want to do that. He might not want to leave America whenever he's put so much into his supercross skills, because he's actually pretty impressive there over the winter and spring this year. So whether he gets that opportunity or not, even if he is asked about it, it'll be interesting to see what he wants to do, because he's mentioned how much he's enjoyed Supercross this season.
Yeah, well, last year I believe he had an offer to fill in at Factory Husqvarna or Factory Gas after they had some injuries. So he could have ended the season MXGP if he wanted to, but he decided to go against that because he wanted to have a go at Supercross. If he was to get an offer from HRC Honda, the question he needs to ask himself is, does he think he'll ever be a top Supercross guy? That's probably what it's going to come down to. Obviously, he was pretty good in Supercross, but will he ever be a consistent top 10 and even a top 5 guy? It's difficult to say at this stage, especially with the equipment and team he's got behind him. It doesn't seem to be top level, let's say. So I'm sure it's a lot of frustration, but I feel like if he had a good bike in MXGP, he could certainly be a top 10 guy and maybe a top 5 guy in the sandy stuff. So he'd probably need a few weeks to adapt back to it, but it would be interesting to see him in MXGP again. But it'll probably come down to whether HRC Honda will give him some money or they still want somebody on the cheap. So it would certainly be good to see him back in MXGP. I do feel like he belongs in that paddock, and maybe after he's had a season at Supercross, maybe, who knows, he'd be happy to come back now. It'd definitely be interesting to see what the future holds for him. But looking ahead, it's difficult to see how it's going to go if he stays with that team in America.
Yeah, and if he does well, even if it's a temporary stint with HRC Honda, and Mitch Evans is back before the end of the season, if he can do well, it might open eyes again in America to get a better ride, because they'll see that with the good equipment, he still has the speed outdoors, which you would think a team would primarily be getting him for outdoors. So he's in a bit of a tough spot there, because his sort of the area he excels in, he isn't getting the results he was expected to. So is a top team going to hire him if they now start to doubt his outdoor skills, which to me is a bit unfair because of the situation? But he might need to try and get a good ride for next year, which he's going to need to be competitive. The HRC Honda thing, if it is a possibility, might actually help him in America. But again, I feel he's almost between a rock and a hard place, because you need to get results to get teams to believe in you. And if you're on a bike you're losing confidence in, or the setup isn't right, or the expertise isn't there to set the bike up outdoors, where's he getting the confidence to go fast, and where are the teams getting the confidence in the results? So to even get a Husqvarna or a factory ride elsewhere in America. It's even though he has a relatively solid Supercross season, he's quite a tough spot at the minute, MXoN, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, considering he's a long way off his very best, I would say the speed is probably, I wouldn't say it's too bad. I mean, he's probably Dean Wilson's pace a lot of the time. He's got a full factory bike. If you put MXoN on a full factory bike, he's going to improve a lot, in my opinion. So that's just what it's all about, getting an opportunity and seeing where his career takes him from here. It will be interesting to see how it all develops. I think as it is now, he probably will struggle to get a factory ride in America. So he might need to look at MXGP as an option. And then, yeah, like you said, if he impresses in MXGP as well, that could also help him with getting a better team in America or a factory bike in America after that, possibly. But it'll certainly be interesting to see how it all pans out.
Yeah, it'll be one to keep an eye on over the next few weeks. So it will. Moving on to the 250 class, and I think we'll start off with Jet Lawrence. He had a bad start in the first one, and then he had a pretty big crash, although it wasn't really his fault. The rider crossed over his line in the air, and he went down pretty hard. But then he obviously went down again. No doubt frustration playing a part there, but I thought his comments at the end of the second race that he'd come through to third and caught Justin Cooper and Hunter Lawrence from mid-pack. He mentioned on the podium that he was quick to call out that he had in fact caught up to Justin Cooper, and he did it again in his press release. So the mental games are definitely going there, and it's pretty clear that Jet's frustrated with his current results. Primarily, the starts aren't helping him because he's not really getting up there to run the pace at the front at the minute, but his frustration's there. He's being an Aussie, he's always pretty honest, and he isn't scared to throw a bit of shade on the Cooper there and try the mind games with 3 points between the two of them. And Cooper starts rapidly improving and chipping away at Jet's lead. It could get a pretty tasty rivalry here in the second half of the US season.
It absolutely could. If I was Justin Cooper listening to those podium comments, that would just motivate me, to be honest, motivate me to beat him and do better and better myself. So it's probably just a bit of frustration on Jet's part, and maybe that's where as he gets more experience, he'll learn to maybe not say everything he's thinking, because you certainly don't want to be motivating your competitor.
No.
So it'll be interesting to see how it all develops. But yeah, I mean, it should have actually been a weekend where Jet, at worst, it wouldn't have lost any points, but the second crash in the first moto meant that was the one that caused all the damage, really. So 3 points in it now. It could get tasty, but I'd like to see them both get out 1-2 to see how it would pan out.
Yeah, and I have to say I was really pleased for Hunter Lawrence to get that win and go 1-1. And I think the most impressive thing for me about it was his calmness. He had the chance possibly to go 1-1 at high point, and he crashed at the start of it in I think it was the first lap of both motos, and kind of threw it away a wee bit there. But this time he didn't sort of panic, even though he maybe didn't have the intensity for the first couple of laps. He believed in his speed at the end of the race and his ability to not make mistakes this time, and that won him the race. And he was able to pick up the pace at the end when Justin Cooper caught him after a bad lap. So Hunter Lawrence pretty much showed he had every facet there at Southwick. That confidence booster now, he's 26 points behind his brother Jet in the championship. Is Hunter now a pretty serious title contender, do you think, or does he need to show his consistency a wee bit more for you to be a believer?
Well, first of all, it's been a long time coming. It's kind of hard to believe that that's his first AMA national overall victory, and he done it in style as well, going 1-1. But yeah, hard to believe it's took him that long to suss it all out. But finally, it was nice to see him live up to his potential, let's say. So yeah, considering the stuff that sort of went wrong for him at Hyde Point, out of him, his brother, and Justin Cooper, he's probably had the most things go wrong. So only to be 26 points off isn't actually a disaster. If he can get a bit of belief now after this, and who knows, it could be a domino effect. There's no reason why he can't. He certainly has the speed and the talent. It's just if he can keep calm in situations like the weekend, then he certainly could be thereabouts. But you feel like he's going to need to go 1-1 quite a lot to get himself back into it, because when you look at who's capable of winning, if he doesn't win, it's probably going to be Cooper or Jet Lawrence. The other one could be RJ Hampshire. So if he doesn't win it, it's probably going to be one of his championships competitors winning. So he's going to have to try and go on a bit of a winning run here, you would think, but it's not entirely impossible.
Yeah, it could be pretty interesting if Hunter and Jed are both have a mathematical chance of the title coming into the last round. Two brothers would be pretty cool, especially two Australians going to America and being in contention for the title. It's a pretty amazing thing that the pair of them have accomplished. Talking of RJ Hampshire there, he made one mistake or maybe 4 mistakes too many. It's finally cost him. The previous 3 motos, he still managed to get second despite crashes. But the final moto at Southwick, it all caught up to him. And at his level, with his speed and his ability to actually be a title contender, if he wasn't making all these mistakes, you just shouldn't be crashing. I think it was 7 times in 4 motos. It's pretty much not acceptable.
Yeah, I found his first moto comments on the podium quite interesting, saying that he doesn't feel sketchy on the bike. But considering he's crashed 7 times in the space of 2 weeks, there's definitely something not right there. So he would need to maybe try and work on that. And maybe, I think he just rides with his heart on the sleeve all the time. Now and again, it's okay to knock off 5% instead of throwing it down the track. So, but because there's no doubt he has speed. Again, he'd be pretty frustrated to be off the podium because he had the speed to be on the podium, no doubt about it. But if you crash 3 or 4 times a weekend, that minimises your chances. So the speed's good, just maybe knock the intensity down 5%, and that's pretty much all he has to do, you would think.
Yeah, if you take his DNF, that wasn't actually his fault at the high point, and you take away the points he's thrown away a bit with crashes, he definitely would have been in around 25 points off the lead, even given the benefit of the doubt, which is very much in title contention. So RJ Hampshire is probably starting to have a lot of regret about his season. He's on 148 points. He's now 30 behind Hunter Lawrence. And that second moto at Southwick gave Hunter Lawrence an extra 10 points on him. So it's starting, even though he's still 4th in the championship, and on the face of it, that on paper, that looks quite good. But the crashes are just going to eat away at him. And a few rounds ago, Grant Langston had actually said on the commentary that he should probably just ride out with 1 or 2% in reserve instead of always riding on his limit. But I don't know whether he heard that, or I'm sure he has people in his ear telling him the exact same thing. So he just isn't taking that advice, which is pretty disappointing whenever you have a rider of his. He's pretty experienced now, and he should be able to be fast enough to still be a contender and still go for podiums 2-3% below his limit, because if you want to be a title contender, I don't think you can ride at 101% every single moto and expect to stay off the ground and contend for a championship. And it's proven so far. So maybe he doesn't trust himself to ride at 98% and still be able to win. There could be a mental aspect there that he just wants to win too badly. But he got away with it at Redwood somewhat, but at Southwick it really come back to haunt him, and he's going to have to make some changes.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. 4th in the championship definitely doesn't tell the full story there, because, I mean, he has the speed to challenge for the title. There's no doubt about that. But yeah, it must be a mental thing where he just can't ride that 1 or 2% below what he does, because, if you look at it, it's those crashes that have cost him, and that's come from pushing too hard. So they've actually cost him at the end of the day, and you would like to think he'd be able to spot that and identify it as maybe one of his weaknesses, and that he has the speed. So if he can just trust himself a wee bit more, and maybe if he's in 2nd or 3rd, just sell for the 2nd or 3rd, get good championship points. That's what it's all about at the end of the day, being smart and doing the right things on the track. So hope for his sake he can sort it out, because he definitely has got the speed.
And Joe Shimoda, again, we'll give him a mention. He was once more very good. 3rd place in the first moto. Consistent again on 5th in points. By far and away the best pro circuit rider. Austin Faulkner struggled again, went down hard. I think Ray looked like he re-hurt the thumb after casing the triple at Redwood. So again, struggles for Austin Faulkner. He mentioned on social media that he's having issues that obviously nobody's really privy to, and he isn't going to share at the minute. But it's kind of hard to watch him at the minute. A guy that's so talented and so fast, especially when he come into the pro ranks, and things look like they're falling apart for him right now. So he's under a bit of pressure to try and turn his career around. Meanwhile, Joe Shimoda, the fill-in, or the 5th rider of the 4, he's doing the opposite. He's doing his career chances no harm at all. And you always feel Joe can still get a wee bit faster, but 5th overall, consistent, very, very impressive for the young Japanese rider.
Yeah, Shimoda's getting better and better all the time, isn't he? Second overall on the day, 3-4, very consistent. Thing about Shimoda is he's like the opposite of RJ Hampshire. He'll ride the 1 or 2% below and just ride consistent, and he's and it tells, and he's good enough where where he gets a start, he can follow the guys in front and start to copy them, and then that helps improve him as a rider. So he's definitely improving leaps and bounds during this outdoor season. Very impressive, and if he can get another few podiums as the season develops, I'm sure he'll be happy with that. And yeah, on Faulkner, it's really not nice to watch that. You sort of ask yourself the question: would he be better just taking the rest of the season off and regrouping for next year? Because whatever the problems are, it's not getting any better each week. If anything, it's maybe getting a wee bit worse. So it's tough to watch, and hopefully after the end of the season he can regroup and come back stronger for next year and remind us of the big talent that he is.
Yeah, and just an interesting thing on Shimoda there, he's actually only 11 points behind RJ Hampshire, and they've both had had a DNF apiece. So the one way of doing it, RJ Hampshire riding at 101% with the throttle turned on at all times versus Joe Shimoda riding at what looks to be around 98% and using his head more. They've actually ended up very close in points, even if the speed differential is probably more than what the points suggest, but it's two different ways of riding, and they've actually ended up pretty close in points in fourth and fifth. But I think before we move on to MXGP and looking ahead to Oz this weekend, we need to talk about the Motocross of Nations format. There's been a statement, I believe, that will suggest, or at least we'll know by the end of July, that the MXGP riders might be racing for GP points at the Dis Nations, which initially sounds quite confusing. I'm not quite sure how they're going to do that yet, but if they can work it out well, it could be a good thing, and it could actually add to the Dis Nations, because for whatever reason, Jeffrey Hurlings, Tim Geiser, they aren't going to want to put their best foot forward if there's too much risk involved to win a race for the Dis Nations, if they could potentially lose a world championship. Hurlings has been hurt far too much and lost too many world titles probably to take a unnecessary risk at a Nations. Again, the Americans, everything seems to be made to suit them, and it's kind of thrown a wrench into the works for all the GP men. So that might be the perfect compromise, but it's going to be very difficult to keep everyone happy, especially with the smaller nations and the guys on the lower end of the MXGP points level. So have you any idea of what way they could run it? Maybe one rider each from each team and just have one American, one Dutch guy in MX2 representing these nations teams, and one in 450s. So then you allow more MXGP riders in? Or what way can you see this working out? Because it actually sounds like a good idea, but the practicality of doing it seems very difficult to me.
Yeah, well, the first and foremost is I think they're going to have to offer GP points to get all the MXGP riders involved. I don't see any other way around it, because it's not like there's only a couple of world championships around after it. I mean, it's halfway throughout the season, and I was whenever they were talking about having it a few years ago, halfway throughout the season, can't remember who I spoke to, but I spoke to somebody from Honda about Geiser racing, and they said if he'll not be racing it, so because they focus on MXGP and it's not worth the risk. So it'll be, I mean, I would assume that they'll be thinking the same this year. What's the point of Tim Geiser racing it for Slovenia at the risk of injury whenever he's got the MXGP on the line? So I think they will have to have points. Whenever you think about it, it's, the usual Motocross Nations format is the MX2 guys race with the MXGP guys and the Open guys. I think you would have to separate the 450 and the MX2 riders. I think if you're offering points, you have to do that. So there would have to be maybe two classes, MXGP and then one for MX2. I feel like each country would maybe be allowed two riders in each class, so they'd have four riders altogether. And then anyone that doesn't get picked for their country that's a World Championship GP rider would be allowed to go as a wild card. But it would leave France in a tough spot, because under the normal format, they're probably going to pick a current 250 guy to race a 450. But if all the 250 guys have to race MX2 class for championship points, they're probably going to have to be left with Jody Tixier in the 450 class, unless it's one rider in each. But couldn't see them only picking two. So that's why I think they'll probably pick 2 for each class. So it'll definitely be interesting, a lot of work to do, but I do like the idea of GP points at the event, because I feel like the GP guys with the normal tradition, or the normal format, sorry, if they feel their country hasn't got a chance of winning, they probably don't take much risk. But if there's GP points in line, they'll definitely have to be full board on the gas. So it makes for a good weekend of racing, I think, if they get the format right. But that's going to be the challenge with this.
Yeah, I think there's going to have to be a certain level of compromise. But as you said, they're definitely going to have to do something to encourage the main GP riders, because there's no point America sending a team if all the top GP riders aren't there. The only way it actually could work out better if they can nail the GP points and this becomes a regular thing. It means the likes of the Americans or any other country that doesn't have regular GP men doing the full series, is it will give them a more accurate representation of what the World Championship's like if they're racing what could essentially be a more realistic GP field in MX2 and MXGP, because the Nations is almost World Championship light because the depth just isn't there. The depth's nowhere near the same as it is in a regular World Championship event. So if you're adding points and you're adding more individual GP riders, regardless of country and everything, and everybody's a wee bit more fighting for themselves and not just maybe consistency for their nation, it could actually be a better spectacle if everything works together, because you're going to have more depth for the fans. You're going to have more top GP riders there, plus hopefully the top Americans, maybe the Australian guys coming over as well. So you're going to really get to see a lot more of the best riders, and especially if it's separate MX2 and MXGP, you'll actually for once have a pretty deep field of MX2 GP men going against the AMA 250 guys, which could in some ways make it more exciting. But it's going to be a very fine line because people are very used to the traditional MX of Nations format at the end of the year. So this could be an experiment that could fail miserably, or they could hit upon something that works fantastically, and you get a Motocross of Nations GP hybrid that could actually be the best of both worlds.
Yeah, that's why I like the idea of it, because there's definitely going to be a lot more depth, which is what it's all about, really. Like you said, whilst a lot of the fast guys are at the Nations, because not all the GP guys get the race, and especially a lot of the MX2 guys end up having to ride a 450, so we don't really get to see their true speed a lot of the time because little prep on the 450. So it's definitely it would definitely add more depth, and it would be good to see that way. Another option would be, I suppose, is have a normal GP on the Saturday and then maybe run the Motocross the Nations format on the Sunday. But then again, if they do that, the GP guys might not take risk on the Sunday. So you don't really want to be in that scenario where GP riders aren't giving their best. So yeah, it'll be an interesting one to see what they do end up choosing to do. But it'll be quite difficult, I think, to figure it all out. But hopefully they can nail it and it can be a good weekend. And who knows, it could be something that they implement in the future as well.
Yeah, or you could even have, like they tried to do in the old overseas GPs, have one MX2 moto, one MXGP moto, and then a super final if they still want to mix the 250s and the 450s, qualifying from their original two single class motos. So maybe that they could resurrect that and adapt that to suit the MXGP Motocross of Nations hybrids, to make it more of an individual, the best 40 riders or 30 riders or however many they want in that super final. And then it's one or two per country, but you're still awarding GP points aligned with the opening motos. But it's definitely it's not an easy thing, and I believe we'll know pretty soon by the end of July what they're going to do about it. So definitely watch this space on that one, and perhaps be prepared for something totally out of the ordinary.
Yeah, that's actually a good suggestion. That is one route they could go down. One thing I would be looking forward to do is that actually qualifying will count instead of monster girls picking out countries from a hat.
Yeah.
I've never really understood that one. I mean, I suppose it's to help the wee countries and mix it up a wee bit. But if you're a rider from one of the top countries, you'd much rather have a qualifying session to get your gate pick instead of monster girls picking out of a hat, like so. And then because if a big country gets a bad number, like that can completely ruin their weekend. So it'd be more fair for the top teams, but maybe not so much for the wee countries. But I think that should maybe be the way it should maybe be run anyway.
Yeah,
So
even
then
just if everybody goes on their individual lap time. So if Jorge Prado qualifies third, he goes to the gate third, and if a Spanish teammate qualifies 20th in the 450, he goes to the gate 20th, say, or whatever way, not really have it based on country, just have it based on what your general speed of each individual rider going to the gate, whichever way you qualify, just like a regular GP. But it's definitely not going to be an easy one to figure out. But if you look on the positive side, it could actually be pretty perfect if they can get something that everybody's pretty happy with, and you actually end up with a Motocross of Nations format with a GP level depth of field, plus the Americans coming over, or the likes of a Jet Lawrence and Dylan Ferrandis, Ken Roxon. The Des Nations actually does promise to be a great event, but there's no point those guys coming over if half the GP riders aren't going to be there anyway. So they're going to have to make everyone happy, because they've made the Americans happy by upping the timeline of the event. So it's a wee bit strange that they're trying to fulfill everything the Americans want, while then potentially sacrificing all the top GP riders. So this is a compromise and a situation in front motor racing are going to have to get right to try and keep everyone happy, because you can't really do what the Americans want you to do to enhance their chances when they're not even racing Europe, they're racing smaller countries. And so now you're going to have to do something to allow all the smaller countries, and especially the GP teams who have spent a lot of money to win a world championship. You can't put those riders and all that investment at risk for a Des Nations that has no GP relevance.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. That's why they need to incorporate GP points one way or another. I think I'd be very surprised if the riders and if all the riders and all the manufacturers agreed to racing halfway through a GP event with no GP points. But you never know. Maybe after a difficult year with COVID and stuff, maybe they'll all just be happy to race now. You wouldn't know. But we'll have our answers at the end of July, hopefully, and should be interesting. Although one thing I would say, just with the season starting later this year, I don't think they had much choice than to run it halfway through the year, because by the time the GP season ends in October, running the nations in November somewhere in Europe, that could be a complete washout. So I don't think they had much choice in that part of it. But I do think the plan is, whenever we get back to normal, that the MXGP season will start in February again, and then the Motocross Nations will end the season as usual. I just think it's a situation that we're dealt with this year, with the season starting late.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because they had talked about moving it up to try and encourage the Americans to come. So if this does work, then it'll be interesting if they keep this format and still have it early September, mid-September, instead of early October. So, because that's been caused a bit of an issue for some of the teams, especially any AMA-based riders in the relatively recent history. So it'll be one to keep an eye on, depending on the success of this race this year. Right, we'll move on to MXGP World Championship now. We'll start with MX2. We're all headed to the first sand race of the year, after 3 hardpack events. And Matteo Guadagnini is the unlikely guy, we'll have to say, with the red plate. Does he feel any pressure? Because so far it looked like he hasn't had any pressure mentally, even when he's been winning at home. So he is actually quick in the sand. Do you feel he's going to feel the pressure of the red plate? Or will he be just like he has been the opening 3 rounds?
I think he'll just be has been. I don't think he's under any real pressure. At the end of the day, he's still a rookie, and it's his 4th GP for factory KTM. If he gets top 5 in the sand this weekend, I'm okay. He might be disappointed if he loses the red plate, but I think he'd be happy enough as long as he has good speed, has a good GP, and I'm sure the team will be happy with him if he gets top 5 overall. I don't really think he's under any sort of pressure yet. I mean, if he doesn't win the title this year, it's not a disaster, is it? He'll just, I mean, he didn't even win the MX 250 championship last year. He was second in it. And even though he was gutted at that, coming in as a MX2 rookie, it's always a bit uncertain how you're going to perform. So for him to show the speed he already has, he's probably surprised at, and he's probably surprised to have the red plate in the first place. So if he can keep this level up of riding up, I think he'll be more than happy no matter where he finishes in the championship, unless he doesn't completely go back a level now.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. There's 14 points between the top 5 in the championship, so everything's to play for. As you say, Guadagnini can't afford to have a bad race here and there. It won't really affect people's perceptions of him too much, but in his head, this is the first time he's ever led the World Championship and he's going to the sand as really the guy to beat, even though maybe everyone doesn't look at it that way, but that's possibly how he'll feel now that he's got that position in the World Championship. And Maxime Renault, he's quietly efficient at the minute, going about his business, not making big waves. He's not a guy that's really seeks the limelight, but he's 2 points off Guadagnini coming into Oss. And I think he'll maybe now, with a 4 GP stretch, really want to turn the screw and try to establish himself as the guy to beat now. As we've said before, he's very good in all conditions, so I don't think he'll be worried like some French riders are about the sand. I think he'll be pretty confident coming in.
No, absolutely not. He'll be buzzing for the sand. Like he's a bit of a strange French rider. His sand riding skills are actually much better than hardpack when he was earlier in his career when he was 14 to 16. So he'll probably be buzzing for the sand. So if I had to put money on it, I think he'll have the red plate after Oss this weekend. If I had to put money on it.
How much would you put on it?
£20. Like, not gonna. You never know what could happen in that sport.
That's quite a bit for you. You're not easy to part with cash, so that means you've definitely got a big favouritism for Maxime Renault this weekend.
Well, I don't know if he'll win it, but I just think he'll gain 2 points in Guadagnini. So I think he'll come out with a red plate probably. I think he'll be on the podium. Even
if Guadagnini gets the starts on him?
Yeah, unless it's like if it gets really, really rough, yeah. It depends how rough it gets, I suppose. This is a track we don't know too much about because they're going there for the first time in years and years. So it'll be interesting to see what the track's like, and hopefully I've heard it's pretty similar to Valkenswaard. So
one rider I'm really looking forward to seeing how it does is Rowan van de Moosdijk. For me, this is go time for his championship chances. Back at home, back in the sand, he's been consistent if relatively unspectacular so far, but as we're saying, he's 5th in the championship, so 14 points off. Now we're headed to the sand, his home country, and I think it's time for Rowan to really be a race winner, essentially, to try and assert himself on this championship. He's done the sort of foundation work the first 3 rounds, and now it's time for him to unleash his talent and speed on this class.
Yeah, Rowan van de Moosdijk, he usually doesn't start the season so great because he's a rider that has a bit of nerves at the start of the season, and because of it usually pumps up and get on pump. But actually this year, the first 3 rounds, he hasn't really showed those signs like he has done in the past. But this weekend, it'll be interesting to see because it's his home GP, it's the sand, and he's expected to be on the podium this weekend probably. So if he can handle the nerves, I think he'll be on the podium. He's my dark horse to actually win the GP this weekend. So this could be the start of his championship battle, I think. I really do think he won't be far away if he can ride like he can and just not get the nerves and pump up with the arms. I think he'll be thereabouts.
Yeah, I think he's the guy to keep an eye on. It's potentially pivotal for his state of mind as to whether he's going to be a championship contender, whether he's going to be a consistent sort of top 5 guy. I think he needs to start winning more races to really establish himself in his own mind and his rivals' minds that he can produce race wins as well as consistency. So I believe he has the talent to do it. It's whether he believes and whether he can execute under pressure, but he's placed himself in position to do it. It's just whether he can start producing it now. What about Ruben Fernandez and Matthias Basrami? They're sand, not necessarily known for being the best sand riders in the class, although they're obviously very competent at it. How do you see them going this weekend?
I think they'll both probably be 5th to 10th, maybe, round about there. I don't think either of them will be on the podium, to be honest, but you never know. With MX2 at the minute, it's all pretty wide open, and the starts seem to be more important than ever in MX2 because there's so many guys that seem to be the same speed. But in sand, it will be interesting. I mean, they've both worked under Mark de Rover. Ruben Fernandez worked under him when he was a former F&H Kawasaki rider, and Basrami's working under him now. So I know both have got better in the sand since their EMX 125 days, let's say. So I think they'll be comfortable enough. I just don't know if they have that speed to get on the podium. I think 5th to 10th would be a safer bet for those two. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I can see them knocking on the door around top 5. Basrami, I think, is actually pretty good in the sand, but whenever you have the likes of Jago Gertz coming back to form, we're going to talk about Tom Vial as well. He showed his ability in the sand last year, and you've Kai de Wolf, who's obviously good in the sand. He was good in the hard pack, never mind what he's going to be like this weekend. So I think you have a lot of guys who are reaching the sort of surfaces that they really excel in. So it could be harder for those boys to get podiums. But I would say around 4 to 8, I would expect them to be battling. But again, with Ruben Fernandez, it's hard to put limit on him at the minute. If he can get the starts, he's a wee bit like RJ Hampshire in America. He'll hang it out and he won't ever quit. So Bushwami isn't really much different either. So their determination might make up for that lack of sort of smooth flowing technique that they have in the sand, especially if they get the starts and the adrenaline starts pumping.
That's very true. Actually, I don't know if they have the Bud facility, the 114 guys use, so I'm sure, and it gets very, very rough, so I'm sure Fernandez has been doing plenty of laps around there over winter, so it will be interesting to see if his sand ridings went up a level. I think with Basrami, his sand riding was already grand last year, so if he can just maintain that and even get a wee bit better, I think, yeah, you're probably right. 48, 5 to 10, somewhere around that. That's the expectations. If they get on the podium, I think they'll have done better than what a lot of people would have expected.
I'm looking forward to seeing Simon Langenfelder as well. He's pretty good in the sand. He's had a strong start to the season, currently 8th in the championship. Again, we've mentioned before, a lot of guys are becoming good in the sand. The way that the World Championship's going these days, you have to be. But Langenfelder could, if once again starts permitting, he could really show himself this weekend. But I think the guy to watch is going to be Jago Gertz. He's 9th in the championship, just behind Langenfelder. And he's going to have to start showing his top form to get himself back in this championship hunt.
Yeah, exactly that. I think Jago, his championship starts now, I think, really. I mean, he's had a tough time with that knee, but I don't think it was affecting him too much at Madura. And he's had 2 weeks now to put a bit more riding in. So you would think he'll be stronger now than what he was in Madura. And he got a podium there. Obviously, his starts are quite good there, which they're going to need to be again. And he's not really known for his good starts, but at least in sand, it's easier to make a difference. And he's known for his sand riding skills, so it'll be interesting to see if he can get in the podium again. I think that's what he needs to do at the moment, just try and get a few podiums before he thinks about winning. And then once he gets back to winning ways, try and maintain that. Lackenfelder should be good, but Kai de Wolf, I'm looking forward to seeing him at his home GP.
Yeah, he's going to be really great to watch, I think.
He probably would have rode this track before at Dutch Masters too, so he should know the track, unlike maybe a lot of them won't. So, and in front of the home fans, sand, he should be good. Should be interesting to watch now.
Do you think the Wolf can podium, or where are you putting him?
Oh, I don't know about a podium. I don't know about that. Again, 5th to 10th probably if the starts are decent, but difficult to get the podium only because I don't know if he's got the fitness for the full intensity for a whole moto yet. I think for 20 minutes he can probably battle in the top 3, but after that I'm not sure. He's still young. I mean, he was racing at 85 3 seasons ago. So
Tom Vial, have you heard anything about his current physical condition and where are you putting him? Do you think he'll be able to finish both motos and do it with decent speed?
All's very quiet with Tom Vial at the minute, so I'm really not sure. I know a lot of MX2 and MXGP guys were at Axel there yesterday, I think it was, and I'm not sure if he was there. I don't believe he was. So has he done any riding? Who knows? It could be a case of just trying to ride free practice again and seeing how the hand is. I think it could be another tough one if I'm being honest, but which is not nice to say because after the last 2 rounds you'd like him to be, getting top 10s this weekend at least to keep his championship hopes alive, because you never like to see injury getting in the way. But I think that's going to be difficult. But you never know. Right,
here's possibly the trickiest question of all. Conrad Mewse, what happens at Oz? He has been not quite on his full form in the GPs. We've seen what he can do in the British Championship, but I think things have been said and frustrations aired within the team. No doubt Conrad's frustrated too. So I think everyone within the team and the rider will be looking to set the record straight and to show the potential, turn that potential into results at Oz. Conrad's brilliant in the sand. He's brilliant everywhere really, but he's brilliant in the sand. And I think if he gets starts, and now that's the crucial bit, getting those starts, I think if he can get starts, he can contend in that top 5. But it's a wee bit rolling the dice at the minute with Conrad. And as I say, I think there's a lot of frustration with the results at the minute, but Oz is the chance for Conrad to turn this around, get that self-belief again, understand that he can run with the best riders in the world, and hopefully that can be the turning point for the rest of the season where he can contend up at the sharp end again regularly.
Yeah, it's really hard to know what Conrad Muse will turn up, isn't it? If he rides like everyone knows how he can, no doubt about it, he has the speed and talent to be in the top five. But for me, it's all about progress and just better than what he done the GP before. So I think it was 11th in the first moto and 18th or something in Moto 2, something like that. So if he can just two top 10 finishes, it would be a step in the right direction at least. And I think that's what somebody like Conrad needs to help his confidence. But at the same time, if he turns it on and rides like he could be in the top five. So it's difficult to know what one will show up, but you would just like to think he can do better than 11-18 what he got last time out. If he's getting those results again at all, so it's a bit of a disaster. So hopefully he can improve on that one.
Yeah, as you say, you never quite know what you're going to get with Conrad, but that makes it exciting to watch him. You just is he going to get even from the first lap, you can almost tell what kind of race he's going to have, and it's always worth keeping an eye on him from qualifying times to his start. If he gets a good start, you're like, oh, we're going to see the real guy try and go to his potential this time. And if he gets a bad start, you're wondering, is this going to be a guy that gets stuck in the pack, or is he going to be able to move through the pack? So Conrad Muse, as up and down as he can be, he actually always makes it pretty exciting to watch, because you just don't know what you're really going to get with him.
Exactly that. You just don't know. You never really know. And it's been a few years it's been like this now, so there must be a lot of frustration there from his side and from the team, because he has everything to be a great rider, but for whatever reason it just hasn't clicked for him yet. But there's still time there to unlock his full potential, so hopefully he can improve this weekend on Majura and then build from there. But with three out of the next four being sand GPs, that's good for him. And if he can improve, he should take confidence. And I think he is a confidence rider. So if he's feeling good and confident, the results should then follow. Hopefully for his sake.
Another guy that needs a good weekend is Isaac Gifton. He should be good in sand, but he's kind of put himself on the back foot a wee bit. Do you think he can rebound this weekend?
Yeah, I think he can. 2 weeks off, I think, would have done him wonders, because I know he wasn't 100% with his ankle or his leg, and he lost a lot of riding time. So I think he's been on the bike quite a lot this last 2 weeks, feeling better. So he rode Axel. He practiced there yesterday. So with loads of MX2GP guys, so I feel like that might have helped them. And yeah, another one is Mikael Harap. What's he going to do? He again, like Muse, he's got all the talent in the world, but it was looking good at Matterley, but 3 laps from the end he crashed, and Majura went back a little, I would say, but he's got the talent and the speed to be there, so it'll be interesting to see how he performs.
Yeah, I think in MX2 there's so many riders that do have the talent, but it's the mental fortitude and the ability to do it under pressure, and I guess that's why everybody gets weeded out of there, and it's only the very elite guys that get to MXGP on the factory teams, because as well of the speed you have to show, like Guadagnini and Benetton have shown this year, that when you have the opportunity, when that speed meets that opportunity, that you have the mental calmness and the mental resilience and the determination to actually perform and execute the results that you're showing potential that you have. It's almost a big test of your mind at MX2, as well as trying to prove that you have the talent and the skill to go out and run at the front of the World Championship.
Yeah, exactly. And Harap hasn't had it easy with injuries as well. So I think it's important for him just to stay injury free this year. And hopefully for his sake, as the season continues, he can get better and better. I don't think his speed's too bad. I think he has the speed for top 10, but it's just getting the starts, getting out of the gate. I think that's been a big problem for him. And as we've seen, a lot of guys are the same speed as well. So it's hard to come through the pack if you do get a bad start this year. It's deep field.
Okay, moving on to MXGP, the Premier class. Tim Geiser heading to the sand, but only has a 6-point lead now after Majora and Hurling's GP win. For me, bizarrely, even though he's had a great start to the year, the pressure has actually come on to Tim Geiser now. It looked like it was going to be big pressure on Jeffrey Hurlings if he hadn't won Majora, because he was going to have to win at home in the Netherlands to kickstart his championship challenge. But only 6 points back now. I feel the ball's been kind of put into Tim Geiser's court, in terms of he has to try and get a wee bit of momentum back now.
I would say you're probably right. I mean, after Russia, I thought a lot of people thought Geiser was maybe going to run away with the first 3 GPs, because they're all kind of hard pack, his type of going. And even though his riding hasn't been what it was in Russia, it hasn't been bad either. It's just been due to the competitiveness of the class, I would say. So But because they're Geyser's type of tracks, only to have a 6 point gap heading into sand, it's going to be very, very interesting to say the least. Obviously, Geyser can ride sand now, and he was really, really good at Falkensward last year. But I feel like he might need to be more on the limit than the likes of Crowley, Prado, or Hurlings, because the sand is their speciality, like how the hard pack is Geyser's speciality. So it's going to be interesting. I have to say, I'm really looking forward to sand after the first three being hard pack. It's set up for a great, great weekend.
Yeah, Geyser, of course, won at Normal last year, and he was actually pretty phenomenal to watch. He looked like he was an actual sand rider last year, the way he was manipulating the bike and surfing those bumps. But he didn't have Jeffrey Hurlings last year to beat, and this year Jeffrey Hurlings is back. He now has that momentum, as we talked about, and I think he'll feel that this is his time to start obliterating the opposition. So we'll also have a healthy Caroli. Jorge Prado, something to prove. So Geyser, although he is a lot better in sand, I think he's going to have his hands full. But I'm not sure you can completely write him out of it either, because he has improved sand so much.
Yeah, I think you're right. But the one thing about Hurlings is, though, because he won in Madura and he's sort of thinking about things a wee bit differently this year, okay, if he doesn't win, he's going to be disappointed. But I think if he gains points on Geyser, I think for now he'll be happy enough, because, I mean, it's 6 points. And if he gains more points, obviously he's going to get closer to having that red plate. And, Crowley's as quick as he has been, that DNF means he's still a wee bit off. So I think if Hurlings can get on the podium and gain points on Geyser, he'll have a good weekend. But because it's sand, it's obviously hard to rule Hurlings out. But for me, the way Crowley's been riding this year, I really wouldn't put it past Crowley to win this weekend. I really wouldn't. But obviously, it's Jeffrey Hurlings and it's sand, so you can never discount him because he's phenomenal on the stuff. But just the way Crowley's been riding at tracks that he doesn't really particularly like, I feel like this weekend he could surprise a lot of people.
Yeah, and the one track he did like out of the three was Matterley Basin, and he won a moto. He rode very intense with a lot of purpose that weekend, and I think coming into Oz he's going to do the same, because although he hasn't the seriousness of the injuries Jeffrey Hurlings has the last 2 years, he's had niggling injuries. So I think he feels he hasn't got to show his best form, and we all know he much prefers the soft conditions. So I think he's going to come out with a point to prove. And I agree, whether he'll win or not, of course, is a bit of a debate even against with Hurlings there, but I don't think he'll be too far away. I think Jeffrey's going to have a lot of competition, maybe more competition than he's used to having, because I think Jorge Prado, he's been okay at the start of the year, but Jorge's not used to losing. He's not used to kind of being in the shadows as he has been, really. And he'll want to come out and prove a point. And we all know what he's like with the starts. He's definitely a better sand rider. So Jorge Prado, armed with a hole shot, an extreme amount of motivation to really get back into this championship fight. And Jeffrey Hurlings isn't always the best starter, so he might have to start putting down the pedal and try and maybe even have to go to the limit to try and catch a guy like Prado or Crowley if they get the hole shot.
Yeah, I think with Crowley, with Prado, his riding hasn't necessarily been bad. He's just been a bit inconsistent. I think this weekend is where he needs to put two good motos together on the same day, and I feel like he will do it this weekend. He's at a weekend off race-wise. He's going to be very motivated to set the record straight, and a motivated Prado, and one that'll probably get hole shots. It's going to be a tricky customer to face for anybody. So I feel like this weekend, this is where his series really starts. I do feel he'll get at least 2 top 5 results and possibly a podium. But the one thing that's going to be very, very important is the starts. Obviously, the starts are always important, but because long gone are the days where only the top 5 or 6 used to be really good in sand, but now they all know how to race sand, so it makes a start on the sand even more important. And Prado's going to get that, so it's going to be very interesting to see how it develops between, you would think, Prado, Hurling, Crowley, and Geyser, but there's other guys that can surprise, and without even really surprising, if that makes sense, because we all know Kodenhoff can do it in the sand, and Fevre, you can't count him out, and there's a few others that have the potential to really shock. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how the first sand GP of the year goes.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what Paul Jonas does, because he's been good in the hard pack, but obviously he can ride sand very well as well. So He's bound to become confident with his first three GP rounds, lying 8th in the championship despite a DNF, the first moto of the year in Russia. So Jonas could definitely be one to keep an eye on if he gets the starts as well, because his talent level could see him going with the elite riders again there.
Yeah, I could see him going with them as well if he gets a start, but I feel like that's been his weak area so far this season. Even though his results have been very good, starts bar a couple haven't been great. So, and it's going to be hard to come behind in the sand because those boys at the front are going to be really, really fast. So, because they all favour the sand, the elite guys, let's say. So it's going to be hard. He might be their pace, but if he's not with them in the first lap, it's going to be hard to catch. So think the start's going to be very, very important. But if he can get out of the gate, he's definitely good enough, and he's been good in the hard pack conditions. So there's no reason why he won't even be better in the sand, as far as I'm concerned. He's had a very strong start to the season, which is good to see because I feel like after his injury and stuff and his rookie MXGP season, people forgot how good he is.
Yeah, another guy I'm interested to see how he does is Ben Watson. He's obviously known for his sand skills, and he's been quite solid aside from Russia on the hard pack. But coming into Oz, Ben Watson, if he can get a good start, I think it'll be a great learning curve for him to see the pace at the front and to see if he can hang on to that pace for as long as he can in the motor. So I'd love to see Ben get away with those very top elite riders to see what he can do with them.
Yeah, Ben's probably very excited for sand this weekend. I don't think Russia and Majura, I don't think he would have enjoyed those slick hard pack tracks, and his pace was actually pretty well, bar Russia, sorry. And in Italy, his pace was good, and then at Monterey Basin, the track wasn't technical enough for him. So I feel like this is going to be his best tracks so far out of the four, and he's probably buzzing to ride some sand. Obviously, he ran with Jeffrey Hurlings at Ling at the British Championship. It's going to be very difficult to do that at GP level, but if he gets away, there's no reason why he can't be comfortably inside the top 10 because he's been in Russia, or in Italy and Monterey Basin. He was showing top 10 speed anyway at tracks he probably wasn't a big fan of. So there's no reason why he can't be in the top 10 if he gets away. But the level of riding in MXGP at the minute, you need to be with them in the opening laps. Otherwise, it's very, very tough to come through. Everyone's on the gas at the.
I think it's going to be a big weekend as well for MXoN Husqvarna. Thomas Kierolson started off well in Russia, but the performances have dropped slightly the last two rounds. I think he'll want to start and get back inside sort of that 5 to 10 range, but his starts aren't always where they need to be, so it could be difficult for him, but I think his motivation will be there to try and turn the ship around a wee bit.
Yeah, he had a really good start to the season on his MXGP debut in Russia actually with 6th overall. And yeah, it's been a couple of tough ones for him, but he is a rookie at the end of the day, and he needs to remember that. And this class isn't easy, but I think he's had a few crashes too, which doesn't help. But yeah, I mean, in the pre-season races in sand, he looked great. He was Kohlenhoff pace and was even beating Kohlenhoff. So there's no reason why he can't be in the top 10. He might even do a wee bit better than Watson this weekend because even though they both like sand, I think I would put Olsen as the better sand rider. I think he's done more in his career so far on the sand, and even in MX2. I know he got injured and stuff, but he went into a few seasons as a real title contender. So I feel like this weekend can be a turning point for him after a few tough GPs. He clearly has the talent to be a comfortable top 10 rider.
So who are you picking for MXGP then? Are you going the safe option Hurlings, or are you going for relative surprise winner and Hurlings to get beat straight up on the sand?
Yeah, I'm gonna say Crowley's gonna win it this weekend. I can't give you an answer why. I just have a feeling Crowley's gonna do it. But I feel like Hurlings will gain points in Geyser, so I think it'll not be his worst weekend in the world either.
So you're saying Crowley to win the GP, Hurlings to leave with the red plate?
Maybe not with the red plate, but he'll definitely gain points.
So he'll gain less than 6 points?
Possibly. I'm going to be played safe here and say possibly. Sitting on the fence on that one.
And you've always supported Jeffrey Hurlings.
It's just the way, it's just the level at the minute. It's so hard to know, but I mean, Hurlings could blitz them all. It wouldn't surprise me. It's Jeffrey Hurlings at the end of the day. I just have a feeling that Crowley will get the job done. And Geyser, it's hard to know with Geyser. I think he'll not be too far away, but it's how much he'll push on the limit to stay with them could be the question.
Yeah, I think his mentality will be interesting because I think on Lommel he really loved showing the world how good he was in sand. And with the championship so tight now, it wouldn't be a bad thing to go out and beat Jeffrey Hurlings and Oss. But will he will he really go for that? Will he? Because to beat Jeffrey Hurlings, he's probably going to have to be on the pace of Crowley and Prado, if not faster. Anyway, so he's going to have to push just to get on the podium. How much risk? You say how much risk is he willing to take? He won't want to lose a lot of points to Hurlings, especially with Belgium and Latvia coming up as well. So for Geiser, his approach to this is going to be very interesting. We all know how fast he is now in sand, but is that fast enough? And will he look at this as a single race challenge, let's say, to show that he is on the level of Jeffrey Hurlings on every single condition? Or will he,
Yeah,
as you say, play it safe? So I think especially if he gets a bad start, how much will he push? And even a good start, if he starts with or ahead of Hurlings, is he going to risk everything to show that he has the pace?
well, this is it. I think the speed's obviously going to be incredibly high at the front, but I think running that pace, Hurlings is going to be more comfortable because he was born in the sand. So will Geiser take the risk to run that pace, and not only to run that pace, but to try and beat him? It could be a big risk if he throws it down the track and it gets a DNF or whatever, or will he? It's still a long way to go in the championship. So I think even if Geiser just finishes one behind Jeffrey in each moto, that's fine at this stage in the season. I mean, there's there's a lot of sand coming up, but this with 3 of the next 4 rounds being sand. But after that, we're back to hard pack again. So the way that her coming into this, Hurlings is in a nice position, let's say, with 6 points being off the red plate. If Geiser can get out of all the sand GPs only 6 points off the red plate, then you would think it would swing back to him being in a nice situation in the point championship with a lot of hard pack coming up. So it's going to be very, very intriguing, and it's kind of a shame that Geiser never rode any of those international Italian championship races, because at the moment we don't really know what his sand riding's like compared to the rest of them.
Yeah, the other aspect is, of course, it's a new track. We don't know how it's going to develop. The weather in Holland, will it be more hard packed than normal if it's been dry? And of course, how they prep it. Will they level it on Saturday night, which I think will play into Geyser's favour, or will they leave it rough Saturday night, which could play into Hurling's, Caroli, and Prado's favour potentially, with the deeper bumps and the need for that momentum and that specialist sand skill. So you have those sort of vague scenarios that we aren't quite sure what way they're going to turn out, and they could favour a Geyser on the day or a Hurling. So again, something to keep an eye on when we wake up Sunday morning and see how the track is. But for me, Jorge Prado has maybe the most motivation of everyone, because he still hasn't got a moto win. He's a wee bit further back on points than the rest of them, and I think he's the one that has to try and show something this weekend. And with the starts, I think his motivation is going to be extremely high. So I look for him to really challenge for a race win, if not both race wins, in Oss this weekend.
Yeah, well, just on the tracks last year with the sand GPs, after the Saturday, they did leave the tracks. They only really done the jump faces and maybe if there was a dangerous area. So I'm hoping to do the same this year and leave it nice and rough for the Sunday, because I feel like that's the way to go, especially in sand, because that's the whole point of sand. It's supposed to get rough and bumpy and gnarly. So fingers crossed to do what they done last year and leave the track overnight, apart from if there's like a dangerous area, and obviously do the jump faces. If we do that, then we'll be set for some great racing on Sunday. I'm not sure out of the current top MXGP riders who would have rode it before. I know there was a Dutch Masters there a few years ago, and Hurlings would have rode it, but I don't think the likes of Prado, Crowley, or Geiser would have done. And of course, it's a one-day format now, so they're not going to get a full day to learn the track, so that could play a part. Whereas that wouldn't usually play a part in GPs, because usually they have a full day to learn the track. So that could maybe play into Jeffrey's hands a little bit. And especially if they leave the track overnight rough, because the rougher it gets, the better for Jeffrey. That man's an animal when it gets proper gnarly sand. And if it is, it's not going to be a Lummel type of track, because if it's like that, then you can't look past Jeffrey. But even if it gets quite gnarly and bumpy, then you still have to maybe look at him. But I'm going to go Crowley anyway and just be different. But yeah, Prado, you're right. He's the one that'll probably be the most motivated, because he'll not be happy with the start of his season. But considering how the results have gone, he's still not too far off in the championship. So if he can have a couple of good rounds, he could get back in contention very, very quickly. So, and we know he's going to get the start, so he'll be able to position himself well from the start of the move, favour him.
Yeah, with everyone fit and healthy and still looking to assert themselves on the championship, it does promise to be a very exciting weekend. Sometimes, as you say, it's kind of a foregone conclusion with Jeffrey Hurlings, but because he hasn't really shown his normal level yet, although he was getting closer in Majora there, it still leaves a wee sort of door open for the likes of Geyser and especially Crowley and Prado to believe that they can win this straight up. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how this all plays out. And as you say, with the track and the track preparation and how the track will develop, being a new venue for World Championship level racing, the question marks are still there. So definitely a very intriguing round we're coming to, and especially with 4 in a row, this is, you feel you're really getting into the meat of the championship now. The first 3 rounds are there. Everybody's kind of got themselves placed well in the championship, or know what they have to do if they're not quite as high up as they want to be. So the thing, everything's really heading towards the intense part of the championship where everybody wants to be on their A game, and with all this training and the long-term look at everything and the way the riders train, now's going to be the time to really turn it up and show your best speed.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what way the championship is looking after these 4 rounds, after the 4 in a row, because that's after that, it's going to be interesting to see who is where. Like things can swing in roundabouts, and at the minute you think Hurlings is in a good spot, but after these 4 rounds, who knows? He might have a 20+ points gap, and if he does, the rest will be maybe doing a bit of panicking. But it'll be good to see who does well where, and obviously it's quite good that there is one hard pack race in the middle of the sand, so there's still a bit of variety there. And then
yeah, although I had heard the Czech GP is still to be completely confirmed. There's a wee bit of situation with that, so hopefully that will still go ahead. But as you say, that's a lovely natural throttle control, quite a difficult track to ride, and it just changes things up again after Oss. So hopefully that goes ahead. And obviously Geyser, that's the sort of track that suits Geyser and Febron more than a Lommel style track. So that'll mix things up nicely as well and make the riders have to be able to adapt pretty quickly to different terrains.
Yeah, and then I think after that they've got Latvia and Lommel. Obviously, Latvia's sandy, kind of hard pack underneath, but it got very, very rough they had a triple header there last year, and it got very, very rough, a lot rougher than I've seen it in the past. So, and then you've got Lommel, which is just a crazy track. Riders getting lost in holes at that place. So obviously it's hard to look past Hurlings at Lommel, but Crowley's ran with him there in the past. Prado's getting better all the time, and so it's set up to be an exciting 4 weeks. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of up and downs, but hopefully it's great racing at all 4 of them.
Yeah,
set up nicely.
I can't wait to get the whole thing started in Oss this weekend. As you say, the sound's a wee bit different, but with 4 in a row, I think you want the great racing, but you want everyone to stay healthy, because at the minute everyone looks confident and looks on form, including the likes of Rowan Favour, Glenn Coldenhoff's coming back to form. You have Paul Jonas as well. So everything as far as the championship and for in front motor racing, the promoters and fans and everyone, everything's pretty much perfect at the minute. So let's hope the racing's great and the injuries stay away.
Yeah, exactly that. That's the main thing. But this is motocross. It's going to be injuries, unfortunately. You just have to accept that now. But hopefully all the heavy hitters can stay fit and can be an exciting championship battle. Out of the riders that we haven't talked about, is there anyone that you think is capable of surprising?
Good question. Kevin Strybus, maybe if he gets a start. He's been quietly good this year, 13th at the championship. I know Jeremy Van Hoorbeek isn't a classic Belgian sandfly. He's actually maybe better at the hard pack, but I'll be interested to see how he does on the beta. Different conditions for that machine. Obviously, Van Hoorbeek is good in sand, but you wouldn't say he's like a Hurlings type or even a Crowley where you kind of bank on him to really excel there. So I think he'll be interesting just to see how the beta does in the sand at this level. And if he's been able to, I think he's still trying to improve the engine a wee bit, but otherwise very, very, very happy with the bike and the handling and everything. So I think Jeremy Van Hoorbeek will be interesting to watch, because if he does get a start, he's gonna lay it all out there to try and put the bike up amongst the leading places as well.
Yeah, I think Jeremy's a lot more motivated this year as well, because they've obviously put a lot of trust in him, and he was almost left without a ride. So to be a factory rider, I think he's definitely a lot more motivated this year. So if he gets away, he'll be trying his hardest. And not to say that he wouldn't tried hard in the past, but I think maybe the last year there or a couple of years there, he thought maybe his career was up last year. So to get another go at being a factory rider, develop a bike, all of a sudden he's motivated and loves the sport again. And sometimes that can make it different. What I was thinking about somebody like Jeremy Sure or somebody like Brent Van Donick, who showed a lot of pace this year but hasn't actually got the results to back it up.
With Jeremy, I'm more putting it down to his health, Sand, and not being 100% fit isn't really a great combination. So I'm not sure about him riding wise. Obviously, he knows how to ride Sand these days. He's had plenty of practice and experience in it. And he's pretty proven there. But with his health, I'm not 100% sure what to expect. You might see Ben actually finishing ahead of him. But if Jeremy sorted his health out, he could go with the likes of Glenn and try to battle those elite level guys in the top 5. So a wee bit of an unknown there for Jeremy Sure. Brent, again, you don't always know what you're going to get, but a very Brent on his A game is very, very fast. So I think starts for him, that sort of level of rider is very dependent on starts. If he can get starts, he could definitely be top 10.
Yeah, he's very good. Brent's very good at Lommel, so these Sand GPs should suit him pretty well. And the fact he's shown top 10 speed in hardpack, which in the past he maybe hasn't been a great hardpack rider, but it looks like he's made a step in conditions, or maybe it's just the 450. Maybe because he's such a heavy guy, he can work on the power of the bike. Maybe that suits him better in the hardpack. But yeah, I think in the Sand he can be in the top 10 if he gets away. I think it'd be interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one as well. And Brian Bogers, Jordy Texier, those are guys that are good in Sand.
Calvin Flandrin.
Yes, and again for that level, I think a wee bit like Brent, they're going to have to get the start to really show their potential in terms of results. You could start 22nd and ride well and get 17th, and it's not your speed isn't going to come through as much as maybe the credit you should probably get for that. So starts for that sort of level of guys crucial, because when they're feeling good, especially on a sand track, they can post results. They have the ability to do it.
Exactly that. And the one thing about sand is people always say that it's easier to make a difference in sand. And whilst it is, I agree. But if you don't get the start and you've got Hurlings, Crowley, Prado, Geyser all at the front, those guys are going to be gone after the first couple of laps because they're not going to hang about. And GPs are very intense these days. So trying to gain ground in the likes of those riders, you're just not going to be able to do it. You need to be right there with them at the start, sand or not.
Yeah, and as well as all the World Championship racing, of course, we have the EMX classes, the MX 250s back. So we'll have some Kevin Horgmo, Nicholas Lapucci battles, perhaps.
Yeah, who do you think can stop Lapucci, if anyone? Do you think Lapucci will go 1-1 again?
Horgmo's fast, but Lapucci, I'm not sure he has too many weaknesses, so I think he would still be the favourite. Fredriksson again, if he can get the starts. I know there's a bit of a Norwegian battle there with him and Horgmo, so they could end up getting a bit aggressive and holding each other up, which they won't want to do if they're trying to chase down Lapucci. So I think it's still hard to look past Lapucci. Andrea Bonacorsi, it'd be interesting to see if he can go any better. Liam Everts, obviously, sand, will that suit him better? He's fairly good an all-rounder, of course, but he had that spill in race 2 at Matterley Basin. So can he put the results together a wee bit stronger, get maybe a wee bit better starts as well, and try and see the top 3 for a bit longer? So plenty of questions there. What are your thoughts on EMX?
I think Lapucci will win one moto, and I'm still going to say he'll win the overall, but I think Horgmo will win a moto. He's really good in sand, and I feel like he's in a good place at the moment. I think even though the results in Madura and MX2 weren't what he would have wanted, I think setting the 4th quickest lap time in the second moto of MX2 will give him a big confidence booster. He knows he belongs in MX2 now, and going back to MX, I think he'll be able to make the switch, and he's very strong in sand. So I think Horgmo can win a moto, but I think he'll win the first moto and Lapucci will win the overall. Yeah, with Everts, speed's not really the issue. He just made a wee crash at Mallory, and with so many riders being the same pace, it was hard to come through the pack again. So starts are going to be very, very important. And the MX 250 entry list is crazy this weekend. There's over 100 entries, whether or not they all show up. But it's going to be even hard to qualify. There's a lot of additional entries in. that wouldn't have been at Matterley. So it's going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah, it'll definitely be worth watching on the Saturday now. It's always a brilliant class to watch. The MX250 is, where you said, the depth and just even who qualifies, and if a good name will actually maybe have a bad lap and that could cost them qualification. So it'll be one to keep an eye on, as well as the World Championship on Sunday. But I think that wraps our preview show up of the World Championship and our review of Southwick. Obviously, with AMA racing as well this weekend coming, so it's going to be a busy weekend of top class motocross action. So thanks again, Andy. Thanks for your time, and we'll be back next week with a review of everything from the World Championship as well as America. And again, if you need to follow or would like to follow or subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, please do. Thanks for listening, and Andy, we'll catch up with you soon. Thank you.
See you next week.